All right, let's move on to the Coach of the Year. Who has done, in your eyes, the best coaching job, most impressive coaching job in 2016?
This was kind of the toughest for me, but I went with Tim Manigault at Concordia. You beat Bishop Luers. You lose to Homestead by 1. You know, that field goal that fell just short. You were up at halftime against Snyder, and you're sitting there at 2-2. You've beaten the only opponent that you're going to see in the playoffs in the in Bishop Luers. And I'm very impressed with what Tim Manigault has done, and I think he doesn't get enough credit year in and year out what he does with Concordia. Obviously, very competitive most years in the SAC, but particularly this year has been very impressive for me.
And really, he had to replace a number of starters, especially on that line, both offensively and defensively. Had a new quarterback, although Morrison has experience in the system and he mentioned the good pedigree many times, Coach Manigault has. But yeah, I mean, just a fantastic job with what they've done.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned, bringing Peter Morrison. He had experience at that position, but, Devin Sparks had played there before. So Peter has been very impressive there at the quarterback spot. Peterson Curligran, of course, both two-way player, just a phenomenal player for them. And Grahovac's good. That line has come together. I think that was the big question in the preseason for Coach Manigault is, will the line gel? And here we are heading into week 6, and I think you can say it has been very impressive and a viable candidate to win a sectional, at least maybe even the favorite as we sit here right now.
And Mark Mallers has taken a step up to be a big-time player on Friday nights for them as well. I had him in consideration. I went with Doug Dinan. And part of that may be just kind of the scoping sweep of what he's been able to do at Carroll. And it kind of came to a head when you saw how dominant they were against Dwenger. When you say, man, Carroll has come a long way in the Doug Dinan era. I mean, really just... We were waiting for that powerhouse to emerge because they were such a sleeping giant, so good at baseball, basketball, all other sports basically, except football. And then Doug Dinan comes in, and that's one of the biggest wins, I think, in his tenure there at Carroll was that victory over the Bishop Dwenger Saints.
Yeah, and how they did it, too. A dominant performance, dropping 36 in the second quarter on Dwenger. And we saw them earlier in the season really struggle against Snyder, so naturally we thought, man, they're really going to struggle against a similar big, fundamentally sound team up front like Dwenger. And credit to Doug Dinan and his staff and those players and what they did in that 3 weeks between those two big games, because they look like a different team offensively than what they looked against Snyder. And, I don't think we give Carroll enough credit, like you mentioned. They're sitting there in 6A, very tough to advance deep in the 6A tournament because you have Carmel sitting there, regional, whoever wins that sectional from down there. Very difficult, but I don't think we give them enough credit and what they've done at Carroll.
Who are some of the other coaches? You mentioned this was a tough one. Who are some of the other coaches that you were considering?
Derek Moore at Wayne. I think he's done a good job taking a next step with that program and trying to build a program. I think Coach Rowland in New Haven, we talked about New Haven, just how good he's done and what that program's done. Still got to give credit to Sherwood Haydock, too, what he's been able to develop at Woodland. Michael Mosser at Adams Central. I think it's a lot. The problem has been because a lot of the teams that were good last year are still good this year in terms of the elite teams. So we kind of discount what those guys do, but to keep it going year after year is incredibly tough.
Right. I was just going to say that exact same thing because you take a look at what Coach Schwarzkopf has done. They graduated that entire offensive line, a lot of guys on the defensive line, and it's hard to get to the top. It's even tougher to stay there. And then Kurt Tippmann, I mean, obviously winning a state championship last year, and they've really picked up where they've left off, considering you don't have David Turner, you don't have Isaac Steveling, you don't have Malik Bramley, you don't have a lot of guys that graduated that played a lot of snaps for you. I think they've done a fantastic job. And one guy I don't think maybe is getting enough credit, Chad Zolman, because you take a look at they're 3-2. Their losses are to Dwenger and Snyder. That's not too bad when you lose a Division I quarterback in the first half of week 1 and continue to play as well as they have.
Yeah, the way they've been able to integrate Jaya Wright into the offense and watching him Friday, you would not think that he was a backup quarterback. I mean, and it's expected. Homestead's always has quarterbacks, but for him to step in and then put together a game plan for him in his development week to week and now looks completely comfortable in that offense, can run anything that Homestead wants to do and needs to do, very impressive.